Our next guest for tonight is Brian. Brian, Jesus came to save us from our sins, not our questions.
True. Agreed.
Do you have any questions you'd like to ask God when you get to heaven?
Sure thing. I'd like to ask God why oftentimes our best efforts to love people, our best efforts to serve people, our best efforts to heal the world just don't work. Why they fail so much. Why the best stuff gets crippled by the littlest bit of evil. Why the times when a massive amount of hope can get turned upside down by one evil dictator, or by a storm, or by cancer, or by a little crisis. I'd like to ask God, why, for the best of our efforts, do we just continue to fail?
Thank you. Are there any of Jesus' teachings you find hard to understand?
Yes, I think if we're honest, we find them all hard to understand. If you remember the disciples, in Mark, the disciples never understood anything Jesus said. He would teach and teach and teach and teach, and he'd be like, why do you still not understand? In Matthew and Luke, they at least had a little faith sometimes, understood occasionally, but it was usually never. The one that I want to refer to the most is the disciples. Jesus was teaching them, and he fed a bunch of people food, 3,000 or so, out of a little bit of bread and a few loaves and a few fish. And he fed them. Well, the disciples then get on the boat, and while in the boat, he's teaching them, when you get to the other side, beware of the yeast of the Pharisees and the leaven of the scribes. And he's not talking about bread, but see, the disciples don't know this. So they get to the other side, and like, well, where are we going to get our bread? Where are we going to get our bread? And Jesus says, do you still not understand? I wasn't talking about bread, I was talking about the condition of hearts. And this is for Jesus, who had just fed a few thousand people with just a little teeny bread. Surely it would have gotten through that thick skulls, that with Jesus around, you don't have to worry about bread. You're going to have enough to eat. That's the same way with us. We just don't understand. It's the simplest of things. It's everything that Jesus says. We twist it, we miss the point. It's terrible, but that's the gift of grace. The gift of grace is what Jesus is. In spite of our lack of understanding, God still loves us and uses us and calls us by name.
Which of Jesus' teaching is hardest for you to do?
Well, Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount, you have heard it said, love your friends and hate your enemies. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who hurt you or who persecute you. And this is by far the easiest. By far the hardest. People that I don't like or who annoy me, or even people I think are evil, to love them, and much less pay attention to or talk to or even like a little bit, but love them, forget it. Absolutely the hardest. We think of people like Bin Laden, or we think of people like Saddam Hussein or others we call evil. No, I think about my neighbor whose dog poops on my lawn. I'm like, love them, forget it. I'm going to kill the dog and, tell the neighbor where to go. No, that's hard to love your enemies, love the people that you dislike, or love the people that annoy you. So yeah, that's the hardest for me to do. Love your enemies.
Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Our guest tonight is Wes. Wes, Jesus came to save us from our sins, not our questions. Do you have any questions you'd like to ask God when you get to heaven?
Absolutely. I want to know why the Chiefs won the Super Bowl months before I was born, and they have not won the Super Bowl since. Now, it's possible, theoretically, that they'll have won the Super Bowl by the time I die, but it's not likely. And so I don't want to say that I'm angry at God, but I do want to say, why? Why have you tortured me like this? Okay.
Are there any of Jesus' teachings that you find hard to understand?
About the Chiefs or just in general?
In general.
In general, okay. Good. I think there are a lot of his teachings. I think all of his teachings are hard, actually. What he asks us to do is silly. He asks us to forgive 70 times 7 times, which basically means you always forgive no matter what. Well, that's hard. That's a hard teaching. That's kind of weird. He asks us to give to the poor and sell everything we have and follow him. That's hard. I'd rather not do that, I'd rather do the easy thing. So I'd say all of his teachings are hard. How's that?
Good.
Okay, good.
Which of Jesus' teachings is hardest for you to do?
Besides all of them? Okay. I'm going to talk about this. Excuse me, my fault. I'm going to talk about this tomorrow morning, but the teaching where he washes the disciples' feet, it's the night that he does communion, which is something that we as Christians hold very valuable. Like, we do communion all the time. But that same night, right before that, he washed his disciples' feet. And like we forget about that part a lot. And like, what does that mean? Why did he do that? And then say, if I did that as your leader, you should do the same. You know, that's kind of a hard teaching, and that's the hardest to actually do. I've actually been thinking a lot about this. Should I keep going? Okay.
Go as long as you want.
As long as I want. Okay. No, this is what I've been thinking about it. You know, we throw out that phrase servant leadership a lot, and like sometimes it doesn't really mean anything. And I've actually been thinking, like, what does that mean? And I think Jesus washing his disciples' feet explains a lot about what servant leadership is about. Because Jesus didn't ask them, hey, do you guys want your feet washed? Or does anybody need anything? I'm already up. I can get a drink for you guys. Is everybody good? Instead he like put on his robe, got the bowl, got the water, and started washing their feet. He didn't ask them if they needed it. So he was leading by serving people. And I think a lot of times my tendency is to be like, oh, those people are having trouble over there. I'll just shoot them an email and say like, hey, if you need anything, let me know. And I didn't hear back from them. I'm good. I got it covered. That's being willing to serve, but it's not leading. So when we lead, servant leadership says, I'm going to bring some food over your house, or I'm going to come over and mow your lawn because you're sick, or I'm going to help you with your homework because I know you're struggling and you're too embarrassed to ask, or whatever. We're going to just serve people whether they ask for it or not. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. It's hard. It's harder than just shooting off an email going, hey, if you need anything, let me know. Please don't email me back. Okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the hardest for me to do, and it's the one that God's kind of like pounding me over the head with. Like, no, I want you to be a servant leader.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Wes.
Thank you. What's your name? Cameron. Thank you, Cameron.
Wait, me? Oh, I'm Daniel. Wait, oh, I thought you meant the cameraman.
The cameraman's named Cameron?
Yes.
Or are you just saying cameraman really fast?
No, his name's Cameron. That's Nick. And I'm Daniel.
Hey, Daniel.
Hi.
Okay, let's try it again. Say thank you, Wes, again.
Thank you, Wes.
Thank you, Daniel.